I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Amanda Forbis and Wendy Tilby, the directors of the animated short film The Flying Sailor, which has just been nominated for the Best Animated Short Film Oscar and can also be currently viewed on YouTube and on the New Yorker website. Amanda, first question I wanted to ask is about the animation style of this short, which is so striking and so incredible to look at. How did you go about creating this look that is a combination of, that seems to be a combination of both 2D and 3D animation?
Well, thank you, Charlie, for those nice remarks. It was, whenever we start a new project, we always fantasize that we're going to do something quick, fast and loose, we say every single time, and then it invariably gets more complicated. But the way that this one came about, we always like to change it up. We always like to do something different with each film. We don't ever settle into a single technique for good. But this time we put together an animatic almost first before anything else. And we did it by just throwing together some storyboard images, some stock footage, archival footage, and that just to get the shape of the thing, to see what we were basically, rough form of what we were doing.
We even stole bits from other animated films.
Yes, we did. That's right. Yeah, we put them back though. We didn't keep them.
Yeah.
But that was so informative, and there were some of these the archival footage that were really compelling. They were these often shots from the Second World War of a ship on fire with this black plume coming out of it, or there was another one of probably a drone shot coming away from a fire on the ground, spiraling upward. And those were so inspirational to us that we thought, we quickly abandoned the fast and loose idea and thought, okay, we need to have that sense of space and depth and that sense of reality to make the disaster feel more compelling. So we enlisted a Maya animator, a guy named Billy Dyer, and he built us a 3D Halifax and then blew it up for us. So that was one component. And then another was that some of that live action footage, we couldn't think of a good reason to get rid of it because it was lovely, and making a animated approximation of it just seemed like kind of a dumb thing to do. So we kept a selection of the live action shots. And then thirdly, the sailor himself, we always knew he would be 2D. That's our wheelhouse. We are 2D animators. We knew that we would have our best chance at creating a sympathetic character if he was fundamentally 2D. And also he needed to stand out from his background because there's so much going on there that he could quite easily get overwhelmed by the action. So we did animate him in 3D. We did that. We learned enough 3D to be able to do that. And then we rendered him in a 2D painterly style. So then we had to bring it all together. And so that involved lots of filters, lots of smoke, lots of debris, and general mayhem. And that's how we ended up where we did. Long story.
Wendy, we see at the end of the credits that the short is inspired by the real life incident of Charlie Mayers, who flew 2 kilometers from a huge explosion in Halifax and survived it. How did this story first come up on your radar?
It came up on our radar over 20 years ago when we happened to be in Halifax, and we visited the Maritime Museum there, and there was a whole section devoted to the Halifax explosion, which was a huge event in Halifax, and really in the context of the world, it was to date the largest man-made explosion in history, that up until the atomic bomb, which came later. So this was World War I, and the ship that blew up was just stacked with TNT, and there was a small collision, and the effects of the explosion were absolutely devastating. But when we read this one blurb at this museum about the sailor, Charles Mayers, it said very little other than that he was on the docks when the ship blew, and he was launched and found himself 2 kilometers away. and he was relatively unscathed. And we thought, wow, apart from being an incredible story, we thought it was pretty rich stuff for an animated film. And we were interested in basically his trip. What was that like? What was it like during what would have been a couple of seconds, or maybe a few seconds? And we turned that into a few minutes of animation, and it was in essence a near-death experience. And so we followed near-death experiences as our kind of template for what he went through in that journey. And we read a lot of accounts of people's experiences, which are very similar to one another. They all go through the slowing of time, the fragments of memory, the even visions of dead loved ones, the white light, feeling of weightlessness, your body becoming one with the universe, and the transcendence it's very, very common. So that's sort of what we took our sailor through before he plummets back to Earth and life.
It sounds like something to look forward to rather than
we
dread,
hope so.
Yeah.
That actually kind of dovetails into what I was going to ask next. And how you determined what sort of themes you wanted to explore for the duration of the sailor flying through the air. And I was also curious as to, were you able to find any records of Charlie talking about, of Charlie addressing what had happened after you first learned about his experience?
It was there were just a couple of lines. I think he gave us sort of a one-page testimonial of his experience. And he said that he was conscious, but that he was really only aware of feeling like he was underwater. And then he came to on this hill. He was very lucky in that he landed in a green space, because if he hadn't, he probably would have been impaled on debris. The horrible potentials were many. And there was a little girl next to him crying, and he said, "Where are we?" And she said, "I don't know." And some people helping immediately gave him a coat and a pair of pants. So we just have that. And he went back to England afterwards and became a pilot on the Mersey River. And that's all we know about him. We're kind of hoping that we might be able to turn up a relative who can tell us more about him. But anyway, to go back to what you asked, which was a long time ago, I can't remember what it was.
Well, are there any interviews of him?
Yeah, no, there was more than that.
About what were our choices for his
how do you make the determination of the
Yeah.
themes you wanted to explore while he's flying through the air?
Right. So obviously the near-death experience is one of the main themes. Another was memory. And I always feel a little self-conscious saying memory is a theme, because it seems to me every artist says, "Oh, this piece is about memory," but it is. And we decided very early on that we wanted the memories that he sees, these little flashes, to just be little flashes, and that they wouldn't be life's greatest hits, that they would be the subtler moments, the kind of thing that you might not even think to tell somebody, but there it is your memory. It's all yours. It's your own private movie. And the kind of thing that doesn't get into your obituary. And so we were trying to let you in on this private experience of his, and to make you think about your own memories and how ephemeral they are. If the sailor ends, those memories, and nobody ever sees them, nobody ever will see them. So it's also about the fragility of life and how our lives are profound to us, and yet they are absolutely nothing in the universe. They're just little motes of dust. So that was another important thing.
One thing I wanted to add was because this people often ask us this, but that I failed to mention in the actual account of Charles Mayer's, he did land absolutely naked except for one boot. and we decided to do away with the boot, but we were not being gratuitous by removing his clothes.
That's right. We should make that point.
Absolutely accurate. And also, if you happen to read up on explosions or high velocity falls, clothes do come off very easily. It's quite remarkable, actually. So that's absolute realism.
We had a funny thing, because a lot of people say, well, why does clothes come off? That's just weird. Why, that wouldn't happen, would it? And we mentioned the idea to a friend of ours who's a flight attendant. He said, oh yeah. He said, you know, we actually can tell how far someone fell from by whether they still have their clothes on or not.
You
so
know,
he knew all about it.
You know, it's interesting you brought that up, because when I saw that, it actually kind of reminded me, it felt like the way that it was animated, it kind of felt like he was sort of like almost like regressing almost into like an infant, and that's almost kind of what, like, to that sort of stage, like he was going through that. And so that's why it never seemed gratuitous to me. I was just like, it just seemed like a logical thing, and he's going through this insane experience, so it all added up to me. So
good, yeah.
Which is crazy, because I usually have a very sick mind, so
oh yeah, well that's right. Well, yeah, we loved the vulnerability of that, and like you say, he goes into fetal position, and it is,
who wouldn't?
Yeah, it's for us, it was the central image. When we first were excited about this story, we imagined this pink, vulnerable, naked sailor amidst all this smoke and debris and mayhem, and just how vulnerable he is and alone, and that it's quite poignant. And yeah, it seemed we certainly could not consider not taking his clothes off. It was,
no, that would have been a drag.
Yeah.
So, Wendy, both you and Amanda have been making films together for quite some time. How did the working relationship between you two come to be?
Well, we've actually been working together, we figured 28 years, although we've known each other even longer, another 10 years even, I think. We met at art school in the mid-'80s, and we both were there studying live action filmmaking. And at that point, I was thinking of going into documentary, and Amanda was thinking more fiction films, I think. And we were kindred spirits, I think, even back then. We worked on a few things together, and I moved to Montreal, and I was starting a film called When the Day Breaks, and I felt like I wanted a collaborator and wanted help, and I invited Amanda to come to Montreal and work on it with me, and she did, and we've been working together ever since. And the way we work together has evolved a little bit over the years, where on that film we both did a bit of everything. We both draw, paint, conceptualize, hash out ideas, all that sort of thing. And now, depending on the techniques and everything like that, Amanda tends more towards the drawing, the characters, a lot of the animation, and I build the animatic, do a lot of the editing, some preliminary sound work, some compositing, that sort of thing. It just seems to work good. It seems to work. But
you said work good.
I know.
Wow.
I was mixing two sentences in my mind.
Shocking.
It worked good. A couple of hits. Anyway, it worked very well, and it continues to work well. And we have our struggles, but I can tell you that when you're deep in despair over something, and you think the what you're working on is crap, it really helps to have somebody there, because she can take over when I'm feeling at the end of my rope, and I can take over when she does. And then also at times like this, when the film goes off to festivals and we get a nomination, and we have the terrifying prospect of going down to the Oscars, which doesn't ever get easier, I'll tell you that. We get to share that, the fun of that as well.
But we each we each can do what the other does, and we do
Yeah.
what the other does in varying amounts. And we always make sure that we come to agreement on everything, which is a big job because there are thousands and thousands of decisions, but we come to agreement and we spitball. I think one of the most valuable things is just tossing ideas around and developing ideas between two people. It puts some air in the creative process that I think is really valuable.
And so, Amanda, Wendy just mentioned that this is not your first go around at the Oscars. You've been up in this category twice before for the film that she mentioned, When the Day Breaks in 1999, and then in Wildlife in 2011. What's it been like to have been recognized by the Academy multiple times? And is there anything about this nomination that feels different from the previous two?
Well, it's pretty satisfying. It's recognition on a level that is otherwise unattainable for a short film. There's just nothing that compares to the Oscars that way. So that's very satisfying. And it's not that we necessarily think that the Oscars represent the creme de la creme of the short animated film world. They're good entries, but there are all kinds of marvelous things that never even get into the long list of the Oscars. And I think that needs to be said, because I wouldn't want people to think that this just means we're, the top 5 films in the world. It's a bit ridiculous. But nonetheless, it's really meaningful recognition, and we're grateful for it, because ultimately we're doing this film so that people will see it and that it will hopefully mean something to them. And so this just opens our audience up. And as to how it's different, it's amazing how each time it's been more of everything. So we've talked about, in 1999, we have about 3 pictures of Oscar night, because they didn't want you to bring your camera in and your purse was too small anyway. So hardly any pictures. And the thing that blows me away is that Wendy lost her ticket to the Oscars. So we go up to the door and we say to the guy, "Would you let her in?" And he said, "Oh, go in." It's completely unimaginable.
Was
this the first year, or was it the first time?
No, 99.
That was in 2000, and I had been before in 92, which was I don't even remember. I guess there was a red carpet, but it was quite different. But in 2012, which is of course post 9/11, there were bomb squads and police, and security was unbelievable. So the lost ticket thing would have been completely different.
Yeah, they probably would have thrown her on her face and dragged her up. So anyway, and then of course the other change is the internet, social media, and the different viewing platforms is just extraordinary. As you know, probably, we are on the New Yorker site, which brings us an audience again that we have never had before. And so that's pretty exciting. You then have to also read user comments. If you're not careful, you read user comments and they make you unhappy, but that's a small thing that you can avoid. So generally the film is seen a lot more, and there's talk that short films are getting more respect. Do you perceive that?
We were at Sundance a couple of weeks ago, and there was a lot of talk about that short films there are certainly received better than they have been, or they're just given more I guess almost equal billing with not equal billing, but they're I don't know. I think I felt it.
Yeah. Often, especially at live action festivals, we felt like we're at the kids' table, where you almost feel like people are saying, "So what do you want to be when you grow up? Are you going to make a feature film?" Without considering that it's an art form, that the short film is its own art form.
Particularly in animation, if you make short animated films, it doesn't necessarily mean you want to make a feature. It's really a different animal. Like for us, we're a cottage industry. We like to do most of the work ourselves, and we work quite haphazardly. We organically we begin something, we try something, we throw it out, we build on that, we we don't work chronologically. So the way we work is quite different from what it would take to make a feature in animation.
And we also
anyway.
think in short form.
Yeah, we like the concision.
Yeah.
Well, Amanda and Wendy, thank you so much for joining us. We wish you all the best over the next couple of weeks. And to all of our viewers, please make sure to like this video, subscribe, and don't forget to go to goldderby.com to make your Oscar predictions. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie.